Welcome into another edition of Grizzlies Playoff Preview brought to you by AutoZone. And after one giant stress ball of a first round series against the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Grizzlies advanced to the Western Conference semifinals for the first time since 2015, where they will meet up with the Golden State Warriors. Game one is tomorrow, Sunday. So, of course, we had to all get together to reflect on the series that was, the series that is to be. And joining me today are Lang Whitaker, Kelcey Wright Johnson, and Elliot Perry. And we will jump right into it because coming off of the Game 6 win, I think it was consistent with a very inconsistent series, but stayed the same in that it was kind of a mix of Minnesota melting and the Grizzlies grinding, especially in the fourth quarter, where Memphis came back down double digits for their last 3 wins of this series. EP, what did you learn from this team as they were able to close out this series against the Wolves?
We've always talked about this team as a bend but don't break basketball team. They showed a lot of resilience. They showed a lot of toughness. And I've said this before, is that the playoffs is a mental exercise. I mean, it requires you to be physical, but it also requires you to be mental. And so you went through a tough 6-game series. This team showed their resilience and their winning attitude. And I think a lot of it has to do with the culture of this basketball team, the chemistry of this basketball team, the consistency we've seen throughout the year, and in the fourth quarter, really, that was the biggest difference in this series. So, super proud of this basketball team. Obviously, it's the first round, and so we're going into the second round playing against a tougher Golden State Warriors team, which is going to require even more mental capacity.
Yeah, can't just be a fourth quarter team, but the Grizzlies were a tremendous fourth quarter team in this series, and also it was the depth that pulled this team through and different players stepping up at different points throughout the series. Kelcey, who was your MVP from the series win over the Wolves?
Brandon Clark. I think a lot of people are going to say Desmond Bane, and I think Ja even pointed at Desmond Bane and said, look, this guy is the MVP of the series. I think Brandon Clark being, if you look at his regular season, being out of the rotation for a chunk of the season, getting back in, coming in and stepping up when Steven Adams either wasn't getting the minutes or he was out in health and safety, being able to step up from that second unit and impact the game the way that he was able to impact it. And we could look at the box score and be like, yes, Desmond Bane was the leading scorer. He shot the lights out this series. Thank goodness, because he saved the Grizzlies. But Brandon Clark did a whole lot of things that aren't even on the box score. And I think the energy that he brought and the matchup that he created there with the bigs on Minnesota, where I don't think the Grizzlies would win this series if it wasn't for how well Brandon played.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the consistency between Brandon Clark and Desmond Bane, 2 things that stand out from that series one. Even looking back at Game 6 last night, to see Brandon Clark post up, get the ball, and then find Jaren Jackson Jr. for that pass, the dunk that essentially seals it. And Lang, that'll take us to Jaren Jackson Jr., who people called me crazy when I said going into that game, I'd like to see him play 30 minutes. We had only seen him play 27, so I get that it was a reach. But he goes out there, he stays on the court for 34 minutes in the Game 6 win, probably the most important double-double of his career at this point, with 18 points, 14 rebounds, the most complete game. And it just meant so much for the Grizzlies to have him on the floor. What did you see from Jaren in that game that he now needs to carry over into this next series?
Well, I mean, we talked about it during the week, Jessica, about how, to me, like, Jaren was so impacted by Steven Adams not playing in this series, really, because all season long, Jaren had Steven Adams behind him and really played well off of Steven Adams. And then to have to kind of go to the 5, Jaren had to make adjustments. And we saw him finally make those adjustments, I thought, last night. And how poetic was it for him to get that dunk with the game on the line? And we needed the last shot. We needed that one more bucket to put us over the edge. And Jaren Jackson Jr. got the dunk and put it in the paint to get us the win. So I thought it was awesome. And you could tell Jaren the relief on his face after the game, talking to Fish. He had to take a minute to compose himself. I thought it was awesome that Jaren stuck to it, worked through it. Like Elliot said, the playoffs are a mental thing. It's all about adjustments, and you're playing the same team over and over and over. And for Jaren to fight through it and to come out on the other side as a winner, I think now you move forward and you take those lessons and you put them to use against a very good Golden State Warriors team.
Yeah, a lot of fun imagery out of last night after. I'm not gonna lie, that series was not fun to me. It was so stressful and it was such an emotional roller coaster for everybody involved. But between seeing Jaren and his dad sharing that moment, seeing Tyus Jones hit the big three in front of his home state crowd and a team that, you know, passed on from him back in 2019, and then also to see John Morant and Dylan Brooks dance on the Timberwolves logo on their way off, because of course they were going to after what Patrick Beverley said. But EP,
I think
that
Shaw
fun,
giving his jersey to Kat's dad was the highlight
Yes.
of the post game.
I was like, because I was still on the radio broadcast and watching that play out on TV at the same time, you're just thinking, man, that's why you don't do jersey swaps. That's why you don't make bets like that. You can't. But you also have to move on rather quickly for this Grizzlies team, because you have a game at 2:30 on Sunday afternoon. And as each of you have said, the Golden State Warriors are certainly a different style of team than the Timberwolves team that the Grizzlies were just able to take care of. You can't afford to be a fourth quarter team against a veteran laden squad like Golden State. They beat the Denver Nuggets in a gentleman's sweep. They have had 3 days off. Elliot Perry, when you look at this matchup, a team the Grizzlies did beat 3 times in the regular season, but what stands out to you as what you'll be looking out for on Sunday?
I really think you're going to have to be disciplined defensively. I mean, we saw a lot of defensive breakdowns against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but this team defensively, you're going to have to be really disciplined. You're going to have to make sure that you communicate, and I think it's going to afford Coach Jenkins really to play a small lineup for most of this series. I mean, you can't get too small for this Golden State Warriors team. And what I mean by being disciplined is the guys in the corner, they're definitely going to have to stay at home, and you're going to have to make an adjustment in terms of how you play Draymond Green. Me personally, I just think like you're going to have to force this guy to shoot some shots. Whoever's guarding Draymond Green, he's going to have to be the roam guy. He's going to have to be the help guy for the most part. And if Draymond knock down some threes or get to the basket and score, you're going to have to live with that. And so it's about a kind of a give and take in terms of what you want to do, because you think about the way Poole is playing. Obviously, we know Steph Curry and we know what Klay Thompson can do when those guys get the rolling. And the last thing I would say is, from an offensive perspective, we're going to have to be a little bit more disciplined offensively as well. But I really want to see Ja play downhill, really, and play with the energy that we saw all season. We saw him sort of, he was kind of in between. The times when he needed to play downhill, he did. The other times he kind of just coasted a little bit. And so I just really want to see him in that attack mode, because I think when he's in that attack mode, it forces everybody else to be in their comfort zones and really play well. So it's going to be a good series. And I will say too, Jess, that the last series was, obviously it was a good series when you come out on top, but it was a fun series overall, because again, this team showed everything that this team is doing right now. It's a new experience for them and they're growing.
Yeah, the resiliency part of it was fun. The acid reflux that I experienced throughout it, a little bit less fun. But when it comes to those lineups, and we saw the Grizzlies go super small, or what Taylor Jenkins said, first by necessity out of game 5, and then seeing some of those Ja and Tyus Jones lineups throughout the way. Obviously, the big storyline for the Warriors in their first round was I don't know what we want to call it, the evolution of the death lineup. They've come out with so many different nicknames, but Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green. Kelcey, you are going like this. That lineup looked absolutely lethal early on, came back down to earth a little bit, but how do you see that matchup specifically and how it could play out in this series with the Grizzlies?
First of all, this new death lineup is not the death lineup that they used to have. Like, that is wild to me. When they had what? Draymond, Klay,
Kevin Durant.
Relax. Jordan Poole is not KD. I mean, I like the matchups with the Warriors better than I liked the matchup with the Timberwolves. And I said that even before we started the series. We didn't match up well with the Timberwolves. And I think that got exploited a lot in this first series. So the second series going in, take away the last game that the Grizzlies played against the Warriors, because no one played in that game for the Warriors. But if you look at even the overtime victory at the beginning of the season, the last victory that they had in beginning of January, the Grizzlies can play against this team. And Klay Thompson, I think it was his second or third game back from injury. He still had 14 points in 20 minutes. They're going to have to figure out a way to run these guys off the line, which they didn't really do against Minnesota, who put up the most threes in the entire league in the regular season. This team, though, with the Warriors, are going to make the most threes in that entire regular season. So I think it's going to come down to not letting them get hot from three, or not letting them get too hot, And EP's completely right. It's an either or thing. You can't let all four guys go off. You're going to have to put the ball in the hands of someone that you're okay with them shooting shots rather than keeping the ball in the hands of Steph Curry when you know that he can go off for 50.
Yeah, you have to stay connected to those shooters. It's one thing to allow 20-year-old Anthony Edwards, and he's phenomenal, to get open for those threes, but it's his first playoff series. Steph Curry is one of the best shooters. If not, Chris Luther would kill me if I didn't say the greatest shooter of all time. Everybody, please protect me as I live with a massive, crazy Golden State Warriors fan for the next couple of weeks here.
Oh
but
my gosh, are you going to survive?
No, no, I'm not. But we'll see. We'll play it by ear. Lang, I want to ask you something that we saw in the first round. We know the playoffs is all about, it's a chess match essentially, and coaching and rotation decisions. And something we saw the Grizzlies go away from was Steven Adams, who had been the starting center for the regular season, didn't work out in the matchup with the Timberwolves. And I know right now he's dealing with health and safety protocols. So that aside, along with a guy like DeAnthony Melton, who we saw less of a role with, didn't even play in the last 2 games of the last series. Do you see spots for either of them, both of them, neither of them going into this one with the Warriors?
I mean, I would assume both of them would fit in this matchup. If like Elliot said, you know, if you're playing against Draymond Green, like, you want him to shoot those shots. You want him to shoot shots from the perimeter. So you could put Steven Adams on him and have him play off in the paint and just be a help defender. You know, if anyone drives, that's Steven Adams' job. If Draymond Green wants to shoot threes, great. Let him shoot threes. If I'm the Grizzlies, I want him to do that. And then, you know, the Warriors have a lot of guards. They have, like we talked about, Jordan Poole, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. I would think a DeAnthony Melton could be a huge help defensively in this series, if nothing else. Just giving you an extra body who can chase and run and stay fresh and give you a little more legs out there against that Warriors attack. The other thing I was thinking was, you know, Steven Adams didn't play in this last series because of the matchup, but if anything now, like, if he's out now with health and safety protocols for a game or 2 games or whatever, you've been without him now for a week, and you've used these rotations without him. These guys have played these roles without him for a week or 2. So I would assume they might be a little bit more accustomed to it than they would have been otherwise. Also, don't forget, Jaren Jackson Jr., Xavier Tillman Sr., both Michigan State guys, Draymond Green, a Michigan State guy, all bigs. I am certain they've played against each other in summers and open gyms up in Lansing, East Lansing, and other times. So they're familiar with each other. This isn't like going up against the team you don't know that well or whatever. Like, I think that probably works in Jaren's favor a little bit.
Yeah, some big Sparty energy there. Elliot, one last question for you. We talked about it in the pregame show before Game 5 on the radio broadcast, but Ja Morant needing to step up and be the all-star point guard, the leader of this team, and then seeing the way that he came to life in the fourth quarter in the Game 5 win, and then Game 6, another situation, had just 4 points at halftime, but was able to get things going. How much does he need to be playing like that from the jump against a team like the Warriors?
You know, I always feel that it's important for him to set the tone. And that's why I want him to really come out and really set the tone for this basketball team. Like I said, he's the leader. He's the head of the snake. And when he plays with that aggression, these guys just follow because they're in their comfort zones. You know, it's kind of like when I played with Charles Barkley came out and he was not aggressive. I mean, everybody else felt like they had to do something a little bit different. And this team's shown that they can do that. Bane is knocked down shots. Dylan Brooks is going to play well if Jaren gets going. But you know, him coming out and really setting the tone for this basketball team is going to be important. I do agree with Kelcey in terms of the matchup situation. We probably match up a little bit different from a personnel perspective, but this team is not going to, from a mental perspective, they're not going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves the way they play. If you get down 26 against this team, it's going to be hard to come back. They you know, and they understand that they are never out of the games either. You know, like if you get up 26, they're never out of games either. With the way they can shoot threes. And you can think about somebody like a Gary Payton Jr. He could be the Gary Payton. He could the third or junior, whatever, whichever one. He could be the difference in this basketball in terms of the way that he guards. And so really, that's why I would love Ja Morant to really set the tone early for this team.
We will see how it all plays out. Warriors haven't been in this spot since 2019. Grizzlies haven't been here since 2015. And it all gets started tomorrow afternoon at FedEx Forum. If you don't have your tickets, call 1-800-NBA-4TIX. Pack FedEx Forum, make that home court advantage something special for the Memphis Grizzlies. Elliot, Lang, Kelcey, thank you so much for joining us. We will see everyone out there tomorrow. Have a great rest of your weekend.